The year is 20XX. The evil Dr. E.A. Actiblizzard and his colleagues have once again unleashed chaos onto the world of video games. Domesticated Ant, having a strong sense of justice, chose to become a game developer with ethics. Thus, the video game Gravity Circuit was created. Gravity Circuit was developed by Domesticated Ant Games and released on July 13th, 2023. In this world, various robots exist to serve different functions, and the elite battle robots central to the game's story are powered by, and known for, their unique and powerful circuits. You play as Kai, also known as the Gravity Circuit. Your mission is to fight against the virus army and uncover the secrets of the mysterious Ark, a large structure which appeared right before the virus army began its assault. In order to accomplish this, you'll need not only the help of new allies, but you will have to face off against old ones. For some reason, the other circuits seem intent on trying to stop Kai, and are willing to do so by any means necessary. What could possibly be causing them to behave this way, and how does it relate to the virus army and the Ark? The only way for Kai to find out is to run, jump, punch, kick, hookshot, and sometimes kamehameha his way through, and defeat the rebel circuits at the end of each level. As a pixel art 2D action platformer where you go through 8 themed levels that all climax in a fight where you, a robot, fight against another robot who has its own unique set of abilities, Gravity Circuit is sure to draw comparisons to another game. Mega something about rocks, rock guy? Mega Rock? It'll come to me, just give me some time. Anyway, about Gravity Man. One thing that sets it apart from its inspiration is that you do not absorb the abilities of the robot bosses you defeat. While Kai certainly does unlock access to new abilities, which are referred to as burst techniques, after completing each level, they have to be purchased at home base with currency and do not always directly reflect the abilities used by Gravity Circuit's bosses. Another difference is that Kai can only equip up to 4 burst techniques. While these can be changed in the menu at basically any time, it does limit what the player is capable of at any one time. In addition to burst techniques, Kai can also unlock and purchase enhancement chips which serve as the game's passives, and they offer a little more versatility on the battlefield. Examples include generating more burst energy when defeating enemies, taking less environmental damage, or the iconic double jump. Kai can have 3 of these equipped at once, and, like burst techniques, these can be changed in the menu at any time. Another big difference between Gravity X and Mighty Man is the hookshot. It is a multi-use tool that can be used for traversal, but since Kai doesn't have a buster cannon, the hookshot also serves as his primary way of using projectiles. It can directly damage enemies, or, in a unique gimmick that I haven't really seen in other games of this ilk, it can be used to grab projectiles or even defeated enemies and then hurl them at foes. While it may seem inconsequential or like it's just a nice little bonus at first, it becomes apparent through experience that the value this adds to the flow and the feel of the gameplay is actually quite significant. It really completes Kai's toolkit and helps him differentiate himself from Mega Guy. The story is by far the weakest element of the game. While the plot itself isn't too bad, the character dialogue is definitely lacking. There are a lot of dull, samey personalities. It could have been awesome to uncover the mystery of the Ark and the betrayal of the circuits, but the plot moves at a snail's pace until the very end, where there's an unceremonious exposition dump. It starts out all mystery and stays that way for most of the game, and then at the very end leaves nothing to the imagination. The game could have done a lot with environmental storytelling, context clues, and some subtlety, and just that alone would have been fine, but what would have been amazing is if the different routes caused the story to unfold in a significantly different way. This would have given the plot so much more room to breathe and supported the game's very clear ambition that the player play through the game multiple times. If the story had been as thoughtfully crafted as the pixel art and masterfully designed as the levels, this could have been one of the year's very best releases. The art direction in this game is commendable. The pixel art is very good, and would have been right at home among the very best Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis games. However, the character designs are a bit too muted for my taste. Some more saturation and color variety would have given the characters a lot more personality, or at least identity. The animation is unexpectedly good, going far beyond its pixel art contemporaries to what can only be described as top-notch. Outside of that, there's not much more to be said here. The game looks great. The sound design is less than great. The sound effects are good, but the music is, well, okay. It works, it's certainly not bad, but while Gravity Circuit can go toe-to-toe with MegaMan in a variety of categories, this is not one of them. And that's kind of a bummer. And the thing is, it's not even close. I went back and listened to a random sampling of MegaMan tracks just to make sure I wasn't being too harsh on Gravity Circuit here, and I'm really not. MegaMan's music, by comparison, is absolutely banging. And a bangin' soundtrack could have helped elevate Gravity Circuit to something truly special. But this game's soundtrack is, in fact, not bangin'. It's fine. It's just fine. It is the literal definition of background music. It does not detract from the experience in any way, but it just doesn't do anything to improve it. While Gravity Circuit may have provided an underwhelming offering in its music and its plot, the same absolutely cannot be said about its gameplay. The game is a literal clinic on game design for its genre, clearly drawing inspiration from Mega Man X and other greats with a very strong show-don't-tell approach to its learning curve. Not only does it offer a blend of tactical but fast-paced platforming and 2D action, it does so in a way that's difficult to even describe, but that's my job here, so I'll do my best. In my first playthrough, I started out with a slow, careful, and somewhat methodical approach to each level, and for good reason. The game can be rather punishing for new players. However, once I'd leveled up a bit, become accustomed to the controls, and gotten a firm grasp on the abilities, I was able to absolutely fly through the levels, especially in New Game Plus. A level that may have taken me over an hour on my first attempt might have only taken me 5 minutes on my second run through. Part of this is due, of course, to having a larger health pool and some power-ups, but the far more important factor here was my mastery of Kai's core abilities, his excellent mobility, and my experience with each level. This is because Gravity Circuit does an excellent job of both level and encounter design. Before I elaborate further, let me talk about what those two things, level design and encounter design, mean in this context. By level design, I mean exactly that, the design of each level. This includes things like its music, its theme, its visual identity, sure, but more specifically, I'm talking about the gameplay aspects. Things such as length, difficulty, be it the curve, spikes, or overall, or any kind of gimmicks or challenges unique to the level itself, usually expressed in platforming sections. In other words, not just the aesthetic, but the ebb and flow of each level. By encounter design, I mean the placement, type, variety, and frequency of enemies and hazards, and combinations thereof, placed throughout each level. And perhaps even more importantly, how each encounter relates to the ones that come before and after it. In other words, a level's encounter design should be, and in the case of Gravity Circuit most certainly is, more than the sum of its parts. In Gravity Circuit, the level design is consistent and cohesive, and it synergizes directly with the encounter design. An obvious example of this would be the snow level, which includes slippery ice sections and enemies that can freeze you. The enemies and obstacles which create the encounters are informed directly by the level design itself. While the snow level example is extremely obvious, it's much more impressive when the level design is less cliché. For example, a music level where giant speakers become a hazard, or a highway level where you jump from vehicle to vehicle and dodge road signs. No matter the level, the encounter design remains deliberate and thoughtful. The developers put careful consideration into the placement of enemies, traps, and other obstacles in order to offer incremental and organic increases in difficulty from the beginning to the end of each level. The end result is a game that becomes significantly easier by the end of your time spent with it, not because of power scaling, but instead because the entire time, the game has been slowly and methodically teaching you how to overcome its various challenges, one at a time, and often through your own failures. And yes, you will have failures, especially at each level's final challenge, the boss fight. In fact, while the general gameplay is almost always excellent, the boss fights are head and shoulders above the rest of the game and are, without a doubt, the crown jewel of the Gravity Circuit experience. The boss fights in this game are the penultimate example of its design philosophies. They are difficult and, like the levels, require a combination of practice and skill to overcome. You are not going to brute force victory by button mashing or with unrelenting aggression. In fact, at the halfway point of every boss fight, the boss will literally become invincible and you will be forced to deal with their special attack before moving on to phase 2. You will need to mirror the game's calculated, deliberate approach and switch between offense and defense, dodging when necessary, and then attacking when you're given an opening. But nothing feels arbitrary or cheap. The boss battle will always be a reflection of skills you've learned and the level you conquered to get to them, both in terms of design and gameplay. For instance, the boss of the aforementioned music-themed level is named Medley. Her attack patterns are a literal song and dance. You will have to dodge music notes, shockwaves from speakers, Medley's twirling dance moves, and even an EQ visualizer. But the thing is, you've just spent an entire level dealing with most of these concepts, so when you walk through that boss door, you already have a clear understanding of what challenges to expect and a general idea of what will be expected of you to overcome them. This is absolutely brilliant game design, and I really cannot praise Domesticated Ant Games enough here. If I were to teach a course on game design, I would absolutely use Gravity Circuit as part of the curriculum. However, as high of praise as that may be, I have to admit that such clinical approach to game design does have its drawbacks. When everything in the game is what you would expect or as it should be, then it can feel just a little bit sterile. A game with no surprises is a double-edged sword. No bad surprises, sure, but no good surprises either. It really depends on what kind of gaming experience you're in the mood for. For me, at the time of playing, this is exactly what I wanted in a game. A clear objective, a tightly tuned experience, and a definitive end. It was a relief to play a game with laser-sharp focus on what it wants to do and to be, and I never felt like my time was being wasted or otherwise disrespected. I truly wish more games would take this approach, and for me personally, I got exactly what I wanted. That said, of course Gravity Circuit isn't perfect, and while its flaws may be few and minor, I do have a handful of critiques, and they are as follows. The game's indication of level and boss difficulty were way off in my experience. The secrets hidden in each level are all of approximate equal value, but are not at all of equal difficulty to discover. Some are obvious, and some are painfully well hidden. Because the game has secrets, you may realize at some point that you have missed something, only to realize that the game will often limit or outright prevent your ability to backtrack. Therefore, you have to play through an entire level again just to search for something you missed. Sometimes taking hazard damage will reset you all the way to the very beginning of a platforming section, which is a little bit jarring. I get that the point is to prevent you from cheesing your way through a section, but it still feels a little weird. What? Now, before we wrap up, I want to clarify something I mentioned in the beginning of this video. I said that I struggled on my initial playthrough and I essentially felt like a god on my second playthrough. And some people may take this to indicate a failing of the game's design. The question you may be asking is, why should I have to play through a second time in order to feel like I've gotten good at the game? The reason why is because there is one key way in which Gravity Circuit differs from the MegaMan games from decades ago, and in fact a way in which games today are just different from games of that era. Simply put, it's because of save points. Gravity Circuit features multiple save points in each level that you can not only continue from if you die, but you can also refill your health and energy, albeit for a small cost. If the game did not include these save points and you had to complete each level, and in fact the entire game with only a handful of deaths, you would indeed master the game and feel like a god tier gamer by the end of your first completion. However, the game would also be maddeningly frustrating by modern standards, a colossal time sink in many ways, and worst of all, inaccessible to a great number of players. So instead of forcing new players to reach a specific skill and experience level just to finish the game, the developers offer new players some metaphorical floaties until they've learned to sink or swim on their own. Then, if they so desire, Gravity Circuit offers a couple of new game plus modes and even a speedrun mode where players can not only enjoy more of a game they've already finished, but to do so at a difficulty they desire and the skill expression that they prefer. I understand why the developers went for this design decision. Giving the player agency in determining the game's difficulty and required time investment can be a good thing, and for this style of game seems to be the best design choice to reach the largest audience. Gravity Circuit was an extremely fun and rewarding morsel of gaming. It's peak 2D action platforming wrapped in a gorgeous pixel art coat of paint. While the story and music are only serviceable, the tactical and fast-paced gameplay rewards players who are willing to invest the time to master the game with an extremely satisfying experience. The movement is cathartic, the levels are fantastic, and the boss fights are sublime. For anyone who enjoys the Mega Man X series or games like it, there is tremendous value to be found here. It's a great way to spend a weekend, and I very much enjoyed the dozen or so hours that I invested to complete the game 3 times.
What?